We left off on shot number 19, rule of thirds. To help us get ready for this shot, you need to know the theory behind the rule of thirds. Rule of thirds is an important concept in photography, and personally I try to follow the rule of thirds. I agree with it. There are people out there that don't strictly follow the rule of thirds. Some would maybe say they don't use the rule of thirds at all. But I think it's a good idea to learn the rule of thirds so that you know how to use it and when to use it, and then decide how to change how you follow the rule of thirds when you get better with photography. The rule of thirds involves the power of three. You've seen and heard the rhythm of three in many different situations, such as small, medium, large. Those combinations and sizes always appear in three. Stories have a beginning, middle, and end. Plays are often formed into three acts. And there's lots of other examples of the power of three. Three Little Pigs, Faith, Hope, and Charity, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. Our ears like that rhythm of three. Stories are just notorious for using the power of three to get the reader pulled in. Poetry, other arts use the power of three because there's that nice rhythm that's created. The power of three relates to the rule of thirds way back into Renaissance days, or even earlier than that. In the visual arts, there was a long time ago, probably prior to the Renaissance or around that time, for a secret formula or secret theory of beauty, and some people thought that the power of three was part of that formula for beauty. The famous painter Leonardo da Vinci, in his painting Last Supper, kind of shows his devotion or appreciation for the power of three. I've had classes in the past look for all examples of the use of the concept of three or rhythm of three in this painting, and I think we've gotten close to maybe 20 examples. So I'd like you to pause the video here and see how many examples of the power or rhythm of three that you can find in the subjects or objects or background of this famous painting. Alright, well, I assume you found some obvious ones, like the pair of three lines here on the floor, three lines in this decoration on the wall, three little lines here on the top of the wall, the way the food is arranged in groups of three, three windows, three walls, three lines, major pattern lines in the tablecloth, and many others. We could keep going on and on. The big one, though, is the way Leonardo da Vinci posed his subjects. He liked to pose his subjects into pyramid or triangle designs here. So groups of three creating that triangle, those triangle effects. Well, like I was hinting at, in ancient times, people were thinking that a formula for beauty could be discovered or arrived at. And there were some attempts at quantifying this, and people quantified them into things like what's called the golden ratio or the golden mean. And as pertains to photography, the golden spiral. Let me show you the golden spiral. Golden spiral is created by having a rectangle and making smaller rectangles until you get this spiral design. It also speaks to the fact that this kind of design, making one box smaller and smaller and smaller, causes the eyes to start here at the focal point, the biggest rectangular object, and then going this way with their eyes, and our eyes swirl to this point. It's always good to have the eyes move throughout a photo or whatever you design, because you want the person to keep looking. But where it gets to this end point here kind of matches up with what became known as the rule of thirds. According to the rule of thirds, you divide the screen up into, or the frame into, three parts horizontally and 3 parts vertically. And at these intersection points is where you would want to place your subject. So it kind of matches up with the spiral. Here's this point, and then the rule of thirds would match up. That point would match up with the spiral. Well, most people that don't know the rule of thirds would probably automatically frame their subject symmetrically or dead center in the frame. But according to the rule of thirds, you want to frame your subject at one of these dots or intersection points after you've divided the frame up into thirds. Some of the reasoning behind that is you're making use of all this negative space over here to push the eyes in this direction, creating more emphasis on your subject than just a plain symmetrical composition would look. So you have to be the judge, which do you like better yourself. In this example, the puppy is placed according to the rule of thirds off to the side, and the face matches up right according to the intersection points. This is a different type of example here. The subject is just the scene, the background. There's no primary person or object that's getting the most attention. So when you're taking scenery shots, I would recommend using the rule of thirds to guide you. And you look for a horizon line or a naturally occurring line, such as the lake creating a line with the mountains right here. If I put the rule of thirds grid on top of it, you'll notice that it matches exactly according to the rule of thirds where you should place that line. So when you're taking shots, outdoor shots, if you're on vacation or something, you just want to get a nice shot of what you're seeing, consider where the horizon line is and put the horizon either here or on this line, and try both maybe even, and you probably will get better looking pictures by following the rule of thirds. This composition follows the rule of thirds. Her face is placed according to that intersection point. But what can I do if our subject doesn't line up with the rule of thirds? Then I would recommend cropping your photo so it follows the rule of thirds. For instance, this is a pretty typical picture taken before someone's had a photography class. You notice how little of the frame the subject takes up, so there's very little positive space. The picture is mostly negative space. Now she does stand out because of the color of her shirt, but I would say this background is almost fighting for our attention, although we do look at her. So what I would do to improve this is crop it probably quite severely so that the image only is this size, but notice how much more space she would take up in the frame. So I think this composition where the subject is taking up more space, there's more positive space, or at least equal amount of positive space and negative space, creates more of a focal point on her. The background is less important. If we compare here, the background is way too important compared to this picture. This is a nice photo, a nice use of macro, but I would improve it by cropping it according to rule of thirds so that that flower maybe stands out more. This is a nice photo too of the puppy. We would do a slight crop so that the puppy is positioned more at the intersection point of the grid, and this one as well. Most of your phones now, new phones and new cameras, all have the rule of thirds grid somewhere in the features available in the menu. And so I would turn that on, and now you know why that grid is there. It's the rule of thirds grid to help you place your subject at one of these intersection points. So I would give that a try. On our cameras that we're using in class, click on the menu, scroll down until you see grid lines, and turn your grid lines on. When you're done, turn the grid lines off. So is the rule of thirds similar or different from focus frame shoot or asymmetric placement? They're very similar. They're more similar than different, obviously, but the rule of thirds is getting a little more specific as to exactly how far off center or off to the side you should place your subject. All right, we're going to stop there. We'll continue next time with the principle of movement.